Hey viewers, welcome and hope you're having a great day. This is Sandeep Nath bringing you the 19th episode of the Renewalism Show. If you missed the last 18, they're all in the playlist that you'd find when you subscribe to this channel or look up videos with the Renewalism Show. But what is Renewalism if you're joining in for the first time? Well, renewalism comes from the book that you see next to me, Renewal. And this book is it's an idea in making a lifestyle change to renew yourself at a mind body spirit level, to renew relationships with family, friends, elders, colleagues, bosses, clients, and with the environment, with the planet, and to renew systems, stuff that we have, the man made world order, which is somehow putting us in a corner ourselves. So, what did we do wrong? Do we need to revisit stuff? And is there stuff that can be renewed? The reason I call it renewalism is because I believe that in this generation, in this decade perhaps, this could become a movement, pretty much like veganism to the last decade, where even though people knew about it and there had been practitioners before the term veganism had been coined, the general adoption with and the social acceptability and people putting their minds to it started happening. And renewalism also is what I expect people would start putting their minds to it once you start reading the book, and that journey starts from renewalism.com. So every evening, since we're talking about these habits at a self systemic and symbiotic level, since we're talking about habits, every evening I have a guest who takes us through one or some of these habits and puts their own personal perspective on it, and importantly gets you to understand how simple it is to really make that switch and stick with it. Today we're going to make a switch and stick with purpose. I believe purpose is foundational. Purpose, without purpose, you don't really exist. In fact, somebody had said that there are two times when you're born: one when you're physically born, and the second when you discover why you were born. That why is purpose. So that's very important. And likewise, the other habits, but this one we'll delve into. In this book, which you can pick up on Amazon through renewalism.com, you've got links worldwide there. This habit is described as organize and recount your day vis-a-vis your purpose. So it's kind of what you do at a self level, and it's the intent is to recharge yourself through that purpose every night. Who's joining me today? This is a dear, dear friend, and so dear that we haven't talked to each other in 25 years. But we were really close and have, thanks to social media, been in touch. This guy found his purpose while I first knew him. And Sunil went on to become a corporate executive with some of the largest multinational companies, currently handling a portfolio across continents. He's also one of the few best selling authors that I know personally and intimately since 10 years. I Will Survive is his book, and 5 years ago, he wrote another one, which he'll talk about. And I believe he's on the way to write the third one. But so he's really inspiring for me, if you can imagine, But what is it that brings a person with this corporate life that most of us have to be able to focus on stuff like books, to be able to father two boys, and to be able to live across four countries? How does one really go about it? So that's why Sunil Robert. Welcome, Sunil, to the show. It's really nice to have you here. How are you doing?
Good evening, Sandeep, and good evening, good morning to all the viewers, wherever they're dialing in from. What a joy to reconnect with you, Sandeep. And first of all, I want the viewers and your audience to know that you played a significant role in helping me get to my purpose or calling, and we'll expound a little bit as the conversation unfolds. But at a time when I was struggling to find my true calling from sales, where you first met me in the company that I was working for, to finally discovering where my true calling lies. In that transition period, we've met, and those were modest beginnings, like I said earlier, like I shared on Facebook. Today, I'm at a point of a modicum amount of success globally, winning awards, winning accolades for my work. I am grateful,
True.
and I just want you to know that right out there, you have my gratitude for playing a pivotal role in that transition. I'm delighted to talk about
So
some
happy
of
for you.
that around habits and purpose, but I'm just excited to be here this evening.
So happy for you. Yeah, that's really nice. So tell us the question on top of my mind, which I would imagine viewers would share. Viewers, please type your questions, comments, pull a leg, whatever you like, but be participative in the chat box down there. My opening question is, how did you do it? Because the guy I knew 25 years ago was just getting his act together, and like I just mentioned, you sort of mastered the act now, and you're teaching so many people about it. You're doing shows on not just purpose but goals and resilience and stuff like that. How how do you manage in conjunction with this very responsible job that you're in?
There are two parts to that very powerful question. How and how did you actually discover that you were part of a larger scheme of things, and what's your role in it? To me, the word purpose is one of the foundational paradigms you build your life around. Meaning, uh, in the French word raison d'être means the reason for your existence, like the core promise as to what brings you into this world. Now, people have different
Hmm.
ideologies. If you're on the atheistic side of the faith spectrum, then you're just a human being in this vast cosmos. But if you're a person of faith, or you believe in a fact that there's a creator behind you, then you are created for a purpose. So no matter what your mental lens that governs your life may be, it ultimately comes down to what is it that you want to do within that short span of life. I mean, before you realize it, life has gone by. I mean, you're talking about 25 years. At the earlier stage, when I had long flowing hair and this very full of restless energy, to where I am now, we've covered quite a distance. And then I'm already now thinking, if I were to be analogous in my thinking, it's more like a basketball game or some sport which has quarters in it, like first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. We are looking at life, and then suddenly you realize that the timer has started counting down towards a retirement, or and so you want to finish your game, because ultimately the way you look at your life is nobody remembers how the game was played and stuff like that, but your contribution to the world, the scorecard, the the legacy that you leave, the scorecard lives forever, in that sense that there is a legacy that you leave behind. Soren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, said life is meant to be understood backwards and lived forwards. In the sense, he said your legacy should define your life's purpose, meaning you first identify your
Awesome.
purpose and then you work towards that purpose. So I discovered my purpose of life in phases, if I might say so. The oldest
Mm-hmm.
of a family of four children, our family was thrown into a sudden spiral of poverty because my dad had lost his job. And as a teenager, I had to take up the cudgels for the family by becoming a salesman with Eureka Forbes, knocking door to doors in Hyderabad, trying to sell water purifiers. So at the age of 18, when my classmates were all studying, going to college, playing cricket in the fields, and catching up with movies and stuff, I was doing a completely different set of activities, trying to provide for my families. I don't want to sound as if it's I'm a victim and all that, But right there, I discovered that my purpose was to rise to the occasion and support my parents and my folks to survive in this big bad city of Hyderabad, so to speak. And then over the next 7 8 years, I struggled hard to support my sisters and my brother to go to college and so on and so forth. So my discovery of purpose at that point just became survival, hold my family together, and enable them to live to fight for another day. But as I
Wow.
gradually moved from survival, I started thinking, you know what? Now things are getting better. My sisters graduated. My younger brothers is doing all right. What happens to my life? And it was around that time I said, I I cannot have excuses. I need to discover what my larger aim is. And then I looked at all the troublesome times that I went by in the past few years, and I said, either I could just be accepting the defeat with a defeatist mindset and say, oh, I fell back and I lost time, and then never try to catch up. But I said, you know what, let me do some things out of the box, and I pursued education while working. Long story short, there is a TED talk that I had shared on adversity that's out there. And
Yeah.
combining those full-time work, and you also came into my life around that time. I pursued education. I went on to have an MBA degree and a degree in journalism. Because those two came together, my work experiences and my education, it was a powerful combination to set me up on a corporate career. And once those two came together, it was like a magic formula. My career never looked back. So I discovered my purpose in adversity, Sandeep. Some people discover it in the lap of luxury, but I discovered it in the cauldron of adversity.
I think we'll just take that as the set off point for the question that came from Arvindan, which I had flashed earlier. But because he has categorically asked for your advice to people post the trauma of the global pandemic. I think we are in a fantastic state of adversity. So, how do people find their purpose now? What's your advice?
There is a in the Oriental language, apparently the word for crisis also has a secondary layer of meaning called opportunity. Within
Right.
the nugget of adversity, you can come through with strength, or you can come through broken, bitter, and brittle. It really, I kept saying, even on my social media posts, crises do not expose you. They crises do not make you, they merely expose you. What am I saying? I'm saying that who you are is determined long before the crisis shows up. Crisis is
Right.
actually a time where your true colors, your true strength, your true core is kind of revealed to the audiences. When you put somebody in a stress situation, if they just fall apart with anger or bitterness, then you know that all along, if they were all nice guys, they were putting on a facade, right? And how I cope with disappointments will truly show who I am. So in this pandemic, a lot of things will happen, Arvindan. My belief is, if you've all along been trying to fill your mind and renewing your purpose, and trying to find out who you are, what happens in this pandemic will really determine how you will live here on. In the sense, this whole notion of minimalism, or the whole notion of trying to focus on the essentials, came about because of this pandemic, right? Now everybody
Right.
knows the value of who we truly are. We are people created for relationships, not for mindless pursuit of materialism, mindless pursuit of success. I mean, the whole notion of trying to going back to yogas and going back to fitnesses, going back to recouping our health. Why is that? Because it forced us, the pandemic forced us to evaluate what our priorities are. And so the first thing that will happen is, if you're really humble and you are really wanting to grow through this pandemic, you will re-evaluate your priorities. That will be the first big benefit. The second thing is, because of that re-evaluation of priorities, you'll also have to relook at what happens in terms of Do you want to continue to go on this mindless pursuit of success, or do you want to say, you know what, I have enough to get by, I have enough to, and then start looking at cutting away the clutter and so on and so forth. So I have a lot more to sort of build upon, but a radical reevaluation of priorities will come about. And the second thing is the ability to go back to the basics is are two inescapable outcomes of this pandemic, Sandeep.
So we have a corollary question on the screen now from Minu. In fact, there was an earlier conversation where it's a debate, whether if you listen to your inner voice, you find your purpose or the purpose finds you. Like, and now put another way, she says, how do we know we found our purpose? So now the pandemic is on. Are we finding our purposes? What's coming out? What are we exposing ourselves as? And I really loved what you said about minimalism and all, because those are habits, guys, which are talked of in this book. And it is now that we've got to kind of hold on to that stuff and make sure that we don't get back into decadent ways that we were in, because they work for us. Those relationships work for us. That self-reliance and health, like we were talking with Dr. Sinha yesterday, is so very important to understand and continue with. So coming back to Minu's question, in these times or in any time for that matter, how do we know we've found our purpose?
It's I think very few people can with rock solid assurance say, Minu, that I found my purpose and this is what it is. And I think if you meet anybody like that, it's great. But for me,
No, but
it
wait a
is
minute, you've done it. So tell us about your story. I'm not
no,
really letting you off the
in,
hook
in, in,
there.
in my case, this goes back to your earlier reference, Sandeep, that how do you have a busy job and continue to do all this, right? And the answer is right there. When I discovered that my purpose, and I'll give you a small background before I specifically answer that question. When I was in
Yeah, please.
Polytechnic and in studying in Masip Tank, Hyderabad, in a government college, I fell into bad company and I did some things that I'm not very proud of. I can't put them on my LinkedIn resume. Uh, but once I discovered my purpose was not hooliganism, was not going the violent way of life, and I chose to see, and that's where going back to this whole notion of purpose comes. The moment I discovered that this adversity happened in my life for a reason, either I could be a victim and be very reactive, or proactively reorient my purpose to my life. So when I found that purpose, it was actually through a bit of a faith and conversation around God and that kind of an experience. The moment I found that, I knew that God, in fact, then I don't know if there are any Telugu audience in your listeners, but there's a lovely phrase that actually describes your purpose. It says the Karana Janmudu means you're born for this purpose. In fact, your life's narrative just fits into that purpose. So to me, my purpose became that whatever adversity came in my life, I need to harness it for the benefit of others. The moment I discovered that I just need to harness it for the benefit of others, this notion of going and delivering talks, going and writing books, going and finally dreaming of giving a TED talk, building my corporate career, not just to amass some rupees and dollars for my family, but to be of benefit and inspiration to others, came into focus. But you know something, like Minu said, every few years I keep having this self-doubt that sometimes comes in and saying, you know,
No, it's just a
am I
reevaluation of purpose, I guess.
correct, refresh sort of a thing. And
Absolutely.
then the validation comes in. I'll share a story, one of the book and one of the TED talk. A young lad from Kashmir wrote to me and said, sir, I read your book. Just before I read your book, I was having suicidal thoughts and I was planning to run away from my house because my parents were frustrating me in pursuit of my goals. What is your advice? I mean, just look how my story set in Hyderabad, south of India, resonated with a story back up in the north, because we were connected just by the geography, India. That lad connected with my story, and I encouraged him to stay on with his parents till the time he finishes graduation. Then he can pursue whatever his dreams were. So my story resonated, and just for that story alone, the labor of writing the book was worth it for me. And then the second story is when I worked really hard and delivered a TED talk. The day I posted it on my Facebook, a top high achieving young person, a young lady, wrote to me saying, "You serendipitously made a big difference in my life." And then I reached out to her and I said, "What does the word serendipity mean? Why are you using that in the context?" Because Sandeep, we're all wordsmiths, right? We need to understand the. So she said, when your link came on my Facebook feed, I was on the top of my building thinking about committing suicide. I
Oh
heard your
dear.
story. I heard your story about fight backs and resilience. And I said, this story just came into me, my consciousness at the right time. I decided to fight and live for another day. Because in our family business, there was a huge loss and they were staring down the barrel of some
Oh,
really
I
difficult
understand
time.
that one.
So just these two examples are enough for me to say, you know what? Nobody cares about my job. Nobody cares about what I do, except obviously my boss and my family and stuff. But what I do to fulfill my purpose of harnessing adversity to inspire others will continue to motivate and inspire people. So as long as I live, and that's the beauty about life, nobody can with guarantee say I live till 75 or I live till 90 or I live. I mean, our lifespans are very uncertain. So you just live as if it's the last day of your life and you continue to make a difference at every possible opportunity.
Very, very well said. Very beautifully articulated there. So, Sunil, there is another thing that's come up here. We are on the top of 20 minutes, but I really find this interesting. That the pandemic is pushing our buttons and it has exposed our delusions to find purpose. In this state, would it be a good thing? Because we don't have a clean mind, so would we find the right purpose?
It's a great question. You never make any life defining choices either in the euphoria of a high or a deep depression of a low. You have to ride through these waves of emotions to really examine what some of your closest values are. So let's say this pandemic has given a lot of people this moment that we are fragile, and then we just have to go and look out for each other. There's almost that nirvanic feeling that I have to drop everything and go change the world, right? That would be very disastrous, not just for you but for your family if you have dependents, or if you are a dependent, it'll affect your parents and so on and so forth. So never take any major decisions on either the high of a euphoric moment or the low of a depressing moment. Having said that, these are great times to re-examine your priorities, and it happens usually when they have a divorce, a death in the family, a loss of a near and dear one. These force us to ask those questions that we've always been burying under the carpet. And so
What is
when
important?
and what's important, what is lasting, right? This Earlier too, I talked about the reason I pursued an immigrant dream was because of exactly that. People told me that beyond being a mugshot in Mashirabad police station, people said I did not have a future. And this is true, Sandeep. Many people said this guy is not fit for anything. He's just a loser destined for a career in crime. But once I turned it around, my life's purpose became, how do I now prove all those pundits wrong, prove that my life can actually be of benefit to not just bring honor to my parents and the family around me, but to actually elevate young people around me. And so when I go to India, other than dropping my bags and just saying hi, hello to my immediate near and dear ones, every possible opportunity, I try and go and tell my story and engage with young people, particularly the ones who are struggling, that do not have support of parents, support of
Awesome.
finances around them, that you can do it because I did it. That's my encouragement.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, viewers, that's Sunil Robert for you. This conversation will never finish in 20 25 minutes, but the pointers and the key point about looking at adversity as a time to figure out what's truly important, and then calming oneself down, and then taking those steps in defining what makes your heart happy. Because to answer Minu's question, you found your purpose. I see that from my experience. When you pursue whatever you're doing on those lines, and you would do it with a different happiness in your heart than anything else. He says hello to his parents, and then goes off to take care of kids who he doesn't have a connection with, except that they're following the same life path. So if that doesn't make a heart happy, nothing else does. And that's when you know you found your purpose. Also, some great nuggets here about sticking with it, because when you are in this so-called or imagined stressful environment, we make our own stresses. But you are in that corporate environment, you just have to see how all of that integrates with what you have defined as important, and bring those things together. And then your kids and your wife and everybody else become a supportive, cohesive unit that allows you to make that kind of purposeful impact.
Do you
So,
have a
so
minute? Do you have a minute for a practical example of that, Sunny? Just 1 minute.
not a minute. I have more than that, Sunil, and I'll just come back to you. I just want to read this statement to you, where she says, Minu says, "Thank you, Sunil. It was beautifully explained."
Thank you.
So,
So
great. So,
just
viewers, do join us every day at 9 o'clock. This is on the same page, and we have with us tomorrow a discussion on real education, because we have been fooled by our own education system and by the conditioning that that's given us. So, we're going to have Vikas Jain over, who's the founder of the Real Education, therealeducation.com. And so tune in at 9 tomorrow. And before I let you go today, I want Sunil to take not one, but as many minutes as it takes to get that across. Thanks,
sure.
Sunil. Over to you.
See, our purpose has to actually encompass our mind, body, and spirit. And what do I
Wow.
mean by that? There are times when, either because of health or because of whatever physical, and particularly for women, and I've noticed that particularly after they become moms and stuff, their ability to take good care of their bodies and renew their spirits and have this feeling of well-being kind of takes second space, because they are so focused on giving to the children, to the husband, to the spouse, and do everything, and their needs are put last. My belief is, and and you have to validate this with Prafula, my wife, is that only when all these three, the mind, body, and spirit, are nurtured, and your purpose actually boosts these three dimensions, will you be truly ever content and happy. For example, the
Wow.
reason I run marathons is, again, that when I do a lot of mental activity at work, I read, I write, my mind is in hopefully sharp shape. But often, because of this, it comes at the expense of not taking good care of our body. So
Hmm.
I've always maintained. My wife also ran a half marathon with me. My teenager ran two half marathons. The reason I insist on this balanced perspective towards life is, one side of it should not come at the expense of another. My pursuit of purpose, which is energizing my spirit, should not come at the health of my blood pressure out of going out of control, or some health issue that holds me down. Because the moment something, I mean, if ever you want to know how your life can just go out of tack, just think of the time you had a toothache or a dental issue last time in your life. It just
Yeah.
completely starts depressing you, and you are not meant to be in pain. You were meant to be in a state of well-being. So pursue your purpose around your body, mind, and spirit. Only then the wholeness or the wellness really becomes an integral part of you. And unless you do that, your purpose is never, I mean, what will it benefit if you've transformed the whole world and neglected your own family? Or if you've impacted your mind, but you neglected your body, right? So that whole perspective of this, and Sandeep talks about it in his book Renewalism, of all these self-care habits that start, because once you, if you neglect yourself, you cannot have a symbiotic relationship, and these two together will cannot have a systemic impact on the society around you. So just to tie those elements together, the purpose sets you up on your path. The path will give you choices towards your priorities, and your priorities will eventually result in productivity.
Wow. Absolutely. I think it takes an author to be able to say that so clearly. Thank you so much, Sunil. Thank you, viewers. And we sign off for tonight. Don't forget, 9 p.m. India time, same page every day. See you tomorrow. Take care. Thanks, Sunil.
Thank you.